Hey guys, it's Ashley, and today we're going to be talking about A Court of Wings and Ruin by Sarah J. Maas. My heart. For those of you who have not been on board with this series yet, this is the third and final book in the A Court of Thorns and Roses, first trilogy, because right now I think it's called the ACOTAR Saga, and there's going to be multiple books / series in this saga, and I'm not 100% sure what's happening here, but this is the end of Rhys and Feyre's story as far as I know. I'm just gonna wait for the next book and see what happens. I have no idea how long this book talk is going to be because I have so many things to say, so many things to get to. This book was really good. I just cannot wait to talk about it with you guys. Also, I'm really sorry this has taken me so long to put up. There's not really an explanation behind that. I just haven't put it up. I'm sorry. There's not really much I can do for a spoilery section because, I mean, it's the third book, and plus if you haven't gotten on board with this series yet, I will say that I gave it 5 stars. I actually was thinking about dropping this half a star lower just because the ending left so many things unanswered that I really wanted answered. So I'm going to talk about that later with you guys, but I did end up giving it 5 stars just because the majority of it I absolutely love. Let's just start talking about it. So if you haven't already read the series yet, please don't watch the next part of this video because I'm going to be talking about spoilers. So this is where I leave you. Goodbye, not spoilery people. Read the book. So surprisingly enough, my notes are very organized. I've got them organized into part 1, part 2, and part 3, which is like how the book is divided up, you know? So we start off, and Feyre is in the spring court, and she is just kicking ass. The amount that she's changed and developed from book 1 to book 3 is just astounding to me. In book 1, she was a human and she had absolutely no idea what she was doing. She was trying to outsmart everybody, but nothing was really working. She was just trying to survive. And in this book, she has so much cunning, so much wit. She's thought this out so well, even though she's basically kind of flying by the seat of her pants at the same time. It's astounding to me how much more, you know, she's changed throughout the series. I don't know about you guys, but I honestly forgot that Feyre and Lucien had a pretty good friendship going on in the beginning of the series. In this book, it's killing me to see that Feyre is keeping this from Lucien, and all Lucien wants to do is just see Elaine one last time. He doesn't even have to be with her, he just wants to see her, and Feyre is like keeping all this stuff from him, and I'm like, come on, we can come to an understanding here, can't we? I really like Lucien. Like, Lucien is honestly one of my favorites. He wasn't in the last book because he was constantly portrayed as that person who was submitting to Tamlin. That's not who Lucien is, okay? That's just every single scene that we had in A Court of Mist and Fury was him doing that, and I think that's what forced pretty much everybody to not like him. A couple of scenes in this book just made me realize how much I loved Lucien in the first book, and the reason that I think that he was constantly submitting to Tamlin's will is because it was mentioned in this one. I think it was the scene where Feyre goes into Lucien's mind and sees what he sees when he's talking to Elaine for the first time, and he's thinking this is what he imagined going to the spring court was going to be like, you know? He was going to have a family, he was going to have friends, and that wasn't what happened. I think that after being run out of his own court by his own family, he was just looking for that familial relationship with somebody, that friendship. And when he arrived at the spring court, people trusted him and, you know, people befriended him. Like, he was friends with Tamlin, but at the same time, he refused to kind of see that Tamlin was doing all these wrong things because he wanted to keep that familial relationship and he didn't want to kind of betray that. I don't know if that makes any sense to you guys. I'm kind of thinking a little deeper here into Lucien. It just made me realize that I really love Lucien. And so after that 5-minute tangent on Lucien's, you know, backstory, let's just continue with the story now, shall we? Ianthe is a fucking bitch. That's literally all I can say about Ianthe, is that she is just a cold-hearted, ruthless bitch. She's horrible. She's horrible. Oh my god, when I read that Lucien took Tamlin's place in the Calanmai, or whatever the frick it's called, she was the one who forced herself upon him, ugh, No! That one scene where, you know, Feyre made herself glow and, like, she positioned it herself so that the sun would shine on her instead of Ianth, and Ianth got, like, really, really freaking pissed. Put Ianth in her fucking place, please. Thank you. I feel like Tamlin is doing a little bit better in part 1. He's letting her sit in on meetings, and he's letting her hear things that he wouldn't have before. He's letting her go, you know, where he wouldn't have before. But at the same time, you know, he's refusing to not listen to Ianth or, you know, Hybern's people. And I still just think that he's spineless. Like, toward the end of this book, he really, I think, redeems himself in a kind of way. Not fully, in my opinion, but in a sort of little way he does redeem himself. But a majority of the beginning of this book and in the past series, he's just spineless, and he doesn't stand up to the people that he knows are wrong. And then we have, like, those two siblings, Brannig and Dagden. Like, what the who the fuck are you? Go away! They were apparently Hybern's niece and nephews, and they were Damari, I think, was that the name of it? They're just cunning, ruthless assholes who, like, poison everybody so that Feyre can't use her power, or, like, talk to Rhys down the mating bonds, and, like, thank God they died. Thanks for nothing. And that final scene where Feyre sees Ianth trying to force herself on Lucien, and then Feyre goes all kick ass on her and uses all her magic and, like, forces her to, like, crush her own hand. Lucien ends up running off with Feyre to the Autumn Court to try to get back to the Night Court. Oh my god. Oh my god. Then we get to part dos. Feyre and Lucien are running for their lives in the Autumn Court. And they're intercepted by Lucien's brothers, and then they escape and they make it to the Winter Court. And it's in the Winter Court as they're running across that frozen lake that all of a sudden Cassian comes down, and then Azriel comes down, and they are saved, and it's amazing. And I have never been happier in my life to see Cassian and Azriel. Like, I love them to death, but I've never ever been happier to see them. So here I'm gonna take a little tangent. I'm gonna take this time to do a little rundown of the court since we see them all in this book, and that way I can keep my head straight with every different character there is. So let's go. Okay, so obviously we all know the Night Court. That I'm not gonna go into that one. And we all know the Spring Court. Also not gonna go into that one. Let's start with the Autumn Court, the one that I absolutely hate with all of my guts. So the Autumn Court is brutal. Their power is fire. Baron is the High Lord. He's this old man who abuses his wife, and he's absolutely disgusting, and we want him out of power because his son Eris is willing to kill him to take his throne. Also, his wife is in love with Helion, who's the High Lord of the Day Court, and they most probably had Lucien as a son, and that is why Lucien is not loved by his family, and nobody really knows it though, so I'm not really sure why, if that's a logical reason that Lucien is not loved by his family. But anyways, High Lord of the Autumn Court is awful, and nobody wants him, and why does he exist? I don't know. And then we have the Winter Court, who is run by, I think his name is Callias, and his mate slash wife, whatever you want to call her, Vivian. Vivian is absolutely incredible. She's amazing, she is adorable, and they are adorable together. Something that I thought was really interesting was that they ended up bringing the Lesser Fae into their army to fight, so I think that that says something about them and what they're willing to, you know, put aside their differences in order to fight for the greater good, unlike some of the other High Lords of the different courts. And they also have that horrible past because a lot of their children were murdered by Amarantha to, you know, prove a point from her, so they have that, you know, looming over them too. Next is the Dawn Court, which is run by the High Lord named Thesian, and he is in love with the commander of his armies, and so he is either bisexual or gay. I'm not 100% sure, but I love that little bit of diversity thrown in there with different, you know, romantic relationships. So go Sarah J. Maas for attempting to start to make a difference in, you know, her writing like that. He is a healer. I love him. He has a lavish home and everybody is obsessed with it. He also has, you know, his soldiers are named Peregrines, which are kind of related to Draken's Seraphim and the Illyrians. So they're also winged. I think they're feathered. I don't remember, but he has those. Next up is the Day Court, which is run by the High Lord named Helion. He is absolutely incredibly funny, and I love him so much. Also, he's not white. She's trying and attempting to start bringing at least a little diversity into her books, and so I very much appreciate her attempt to start. It's definitely not, you know, all the way there yet, but it's a beginning. He's so funny, he's so stark, he's so blunt, he loves threesomes. He's bisexual also, and he's close allies with the Night Court, which is really, really great because we all love the Night Court. Also, he is the father to Lucian, as we find out in this book, which absolutely completely blew my fucking mind. He's in love with Baron's wife, like I mentioned before. Also, I want Lucian and Elaine to take over the day court eventually because I think that would be perfect. But I didn't really write anything about the summer court because we'd also seen the summer court, but that is run by Tarquin, and he also has that idea to bring, you know, that divide between the lesser fae and the high fae sort of down. That's all I remember from his court. Okay, really fast, just want to bring in that moment where Rhys and Feyre see each other for the first time again since she left for the spring court. And they fall to their knees on the ground and they just hold each other, and it was just so adorable and I can't get over it. And I could think about that moment forever and ever and never be over it. So let's talk a little bit about Nesta and Elaine. I think that it's so interesting how totally different they are. Elaine is like the soft, kind-hearted girl, and Nesta is like the cold, hard as ice girl. It's crazy how different they are, and I think Feyre is somewhere in the middle between them, which I also find really interesting. So we find out that Nesta actually stole something from the cauldron, and so nobody knows what kind of power she has, you know, because she seems to be really, really powerful. She was connected in a way to the cauldron, you know, she had its power, but she could also tell where it was and like what it was doing and when it was being used, which was really, really helpful. And then Elaine, as soon as she started talking that gibberish that literally didn't make any sense at all, I knew that she was predicting the future, because when somebody starts talking gibberish and things that like sound really convoluted and like riddles, you know they're predicting the future in like a fantasy book. It's kind of hard to say that they're not and that they're just literally crazy. So when Elaine was, you know, realized that she was a seer, and everybody realized that she was a seer, you know, it was kind of like not really a revelation to me. It was just kind of like, yeah, they finally figured it out. Go you guys. Also, can I just say that I really don't like Nesta? I didn't like her in the last book. You know, I like her with Cassian. I think that their dynamic is really great, but Nesta as a regular person, I don't like. Maybe toward the end of this book when she finally started growing a heart, but throughout a majority of the book and the series, like, she's been ice, and she doesn't care, and I just don't like her that much. I'm sorry. Now, Azriel. Azriel is a character that I did not talk about in my Akamath book talk because we didn't really see a lot of him in Akamath, but I will bring him up in Akawar because we do see a lot more of him. First of all, he's funny. Who knew? When he and Feyre are training to, you know, try to get her to fly, he's funny. He actually cracks jokes. I hadn't expected that, and I loved that. Then we also see that kindness that he shows Elaine when he's constantly talking to her and trying to get her to open up. You know, and he wastes absolutely no time to go help Feyre save Elaine from Hybern. And he gives Elaine Truth Teller at the end, you know, when the war starts. So I'm kind of questioning now this romance between them, now that Moore is off the table, because Moore had like that whole spiel at the end about how, you know, she likes girls and not guys. I'm questioning if there's going to be some kind of a love triangle between her, Lucian, and Azriel, and I'm not really excited about it because I really just want Elaine with Lucian, but I mean that also might just be because I know that they're like supposed to meant to be. I think that Azriel and Elaine make a better pair, but Lucian and Elaine are kind of already meant to be. So now that I'm thinking about it, I'm very, very on the fence about this. I really don't want there to be a love triangle, but I'm on the fence about who I would ship who with. Yeah. No, the bone carver. Oh my god. Okay, there was somebody, and I'll put the comment right here. There was somebody in my Akamath book talk who said that they thought the bone carver was really going to be an image of Feyre and Rhys's son in the future. And oh my god, girl, you are so good, because that is exactly what happened. So they talk to the Bone Carver because they want the Bone Carver to help them fight in this war against Hybern, and the Bone Carver tells them, fine, I'll fight, but only if you give me the Ouroboros, and which is that mirror that makes you confront your worst fears and then like tells you the truth or something. It's in the Court of Nightmares, I'm not 100% sure. So Feyre's like, yeah, sure, whatever, we'll get it for you. So they end up going to the Court of Nightmares, and Kier, I think, tells them, sure, you can have it, but only when you look into it and confront your own fears yourself. And Feyre's like, yeah, no, not gonna happen. But they also go to the Court of Nightmares not only for the Bone Carver, but to get them to fight in the war. And Kira's like, yeah, well, you know, we want access to Valaris, you know, this city of starlight that you never told us about. And I'm like, hell no. No, 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 no. But of course they need them to fight, so they say sure, but only like a specific time. They have limitations to it, but still, I'm like, hell no. Back to the bone carver though, so she ends up facing the Ouroboros, and it makes you face like yourself, your true self. And if you're able to look at yourself in the mirror and accept who you are, the good, the bad, and the ugly, then you are able to take the Ouroboros. And so she ends up doing that. That scene was really weird, by the way. She saw like this creepy tiger thing. I have no idea what that was about, but she gives the Ouroboros to the bone carver, and he's like, psh, yeah, I don't really need it. I just wanted to make sure you were worthy enough. Alright, I see the kind of games you're playing. Alright. Oh, and then back to the Court of Nightmares though. I loved how when they walked into the Court of Nightmares, there was only one throne, and Rhys sat Feyre on the throne, and he sat on the side of it. I loved that so much. And there's also that promise that Rhys makes Eris of the Autumn Court, that when Eris brings down Baron, Rhys will give him his, like, blessing, like he will promote him as the next person to go on the throne, something like that. I don't know if it's just me, but neither of those promises that they made in the Court of Nightmares were fulfilled in this book. I don't know what's gonna happen with those, but I guess we'll find out. I'm not sure. So we see also a lot more of Mor in this book too, and the fact that she was absolutely petrified after Rhys had made that deal with Keir in the Court of Nightmares. They're all of a sudden going to invade this city that she's come to call home, this city that she's, you know, found as her safe haven for all of these years, and all of a sudden all of her worst fears are going to just start invading. She is petrified. And then we also, like I mentioned before, get that scene where Mor just spills everything to Feyre about how she is gay, and she, you know, her heart belongs to females, and she fell in love with that human queen and hasn't since found that love. And although Azriel is absolutely head over heels in love with her, she just hasn't found it in her heart to actually have the guts to break it to him yet. The amount of like backstory and inner demons that we see in Mor in this book just really, really, really made me love her that much more. I really, really love her so much, and I feel so bad for her, and my heart breaks for her, but I just hope that, you know, she can end up getting what she wants in the next couple of books, if she's even in the next couple of books. I really, really hope that that's something that happens, because she so deserves it. Okay, so now let's move on to Amren. So we find out how Amren escaped from the prison, and she ended up, you know, putting herself in this Fae body so that the prison wouldn't recognize her as what she was, and it let her go. I feel really bad that she had to do that to herself, but still at the same time, like, you got out, girl, you go. Her little, like, fling with Varian of the Summer Court is so adorable, because she's so tiny and he's so summery, and I just see them together so well, and it's so cute. And at the very end, when Amren brought Feyre to the cauldron and had her put her hand on it, and she was like, I'm sorry. I honestly thought that Amren had betrayed them. I was so pissed. But then, you know, Amren was like, this is the only way. You have to help me free me from this body, and I will destroy everybody, and, you know, I will be set free. And I'm like, oh, Amren, I'm sorry I ever doubted you, girl. I'm sorry. And then Rhys ends up bringing her back when he comes back, and so now she's just regular high fae. I have a couple things to say about that, but I'm gonna wait until the end when I start talking about, like, the whole Rhys dying thing. So wait till then, okay? So the library scene where Hybern sends his twin ravens down into the library to go after Feyre and Nesta, because they want, I think they want Nesta. I think that's what it is, because she has the cauldron power. And so Feyre and Nesta run all the way down to the library, and they get to the bottom where they see that creature, a Byraxis, I think his name is, Byraxis, and Feyre ends up making that deal with him, and all he wants is for somebody to keep him company. Is it just me, or do all of the monsters and the creepy creatures in this book are just, they're so lovable? Like, they're creepy and they're horrible and you want to hate them, but you also want to love them because they just want the weirdest things. He wants somebody to keep him company and to tell him stories, and then at the end he also just wants a window high up so that he can see the night sky. Did anybody else panic when Elaine said that Cassian would be killed far more easily than shredding his wings? Because I did. Like I said, when she started spewing that absolute nonsense, I knew that she was predicting the future, but when when she said that about Cassian, I about had a heart attack. Oh my god. So the meeting. Holy crap. Okay, the first time that Rhys ever mentioned that there was going to be a meeting of the High Lords, you know? Oh, I have been waiting for that scene the entire book, because this will have been the first time that Rhys, Feyre, and Tamlin are all in the same room together among everybody else, and I just wanted to see what was gonna happen. I was so ready for that scene, and when it came, I was only slightly disappointed. I was hoping that Tamlin was going to be a bit of a better person than he really was, but he ended up just being like the asshole that everybody thinks that he is. The things that he was saying in front of some of the other High Lords were just so disgusting and so rude, and I just could not take it. And then he claims this whole story about how he only let Hybern into his land to feign cooperation and to kind of be a spy on them, and I'm like, are we really supposed to believe you at this point? Like, really? Are we? Because I'm not sure I do. And then that part where Azriel has to tackle Eris because Eris called Mor a slut, and Feyre literally just stands up and she's like, come, Azriel. And he immediately stops, like, Feyre, you go, girl, you go. And then in the second meeting, Hybern ends up ripping down the human wall, and, you know, everything goes to hell. And now we're on to part 3. The first thing that I wrote down was the scene at the Graysons Manor. So Elaine and the whole gang, they all go to Elaine's fiance, who is the fairy hater in the human world, and they tell him, you know, you have to take in as many humans as you can because there is going to be a war and people are going to die. And he's like, screw you, you're a fairy, go die. And I just wanted to like pound his face in with how mean he was being to Elaine. You don't know what she's been through. You don't know that she was forced into this. Like, boy, you get your shit together. And then halfway in the middle of that scene, Jurian walks in, and I'm like, what the hell? And then he ends up saying that like this whole entire time he's been faking it, that he's been on Hybern's side because all he really wants is just to beg for forgiveness from Miriam and Draken. And I'm like, again, are we really supposed to believe this? Like, I'm not sure what to believe anymore. But in the end, I was really kind of happy that he ended up showing up when he did, because he did end up being a lot of help, especially when Feyre was trying to get Elaine back from Hybern. And so in the end, I really kind of appreciated that, and I really ended up liking him. So they fight in Adriata in the Summer Court. And then they fight in Adriata again because Hybern apparently really likes to piss off the Summer Court. And then they end up fighting in the Winter Court. And then when they're fighting in the Winter Court, that's when they realize that Hybern is making his move on the humans. And I'm like, I feel like you guys should have realized this sooner. So that is when Feyre takes it upon herself to go and find the Suriel, ask him for questions. I don't remember, but the Suriel, oh my goodness. Yet another monster that you cannot help but love. He is so like, I have no words for him. I love him so much. He has shown up in every book to help Feyre. He is the real deal. He is the real MVP of this book, let's be real. So he tells Feyre how to stop the armies. He tells her she has to face the Ouroboros, and then Ianth fucking kills him. So she runs and she leads them to the Weaver, and the Weaver kills Ianth and, you know, the 2 people that she was with, and she ends up going back to the Suriel, and she's like, how do I save you? And he tells her that he liked her because she was kind, and that's why he told her how to do everything. And then he tells her, you know, I told you to stay with the High Lord, and you did. And she's like, oh my god, you met Rhys and not Tamlin. And so then the war begins. So Rhys gives his speech, and I legit cry, no joke. That's all I'm gonna say, I cried. And then the first people that go into the battle are the Bone Carver and Bryaxis and the Weaver, and then Rhys reveals that he made a deal with the Weaver, but the Weaver and the Bone Carver end up dying anyways, so I don't think that those deals really, like, they're like kind of like null and void. But Bryaxis ends up disappearing, and that's another thing that I have like a question about toward the end. Tamlin and Baron and Jurian come and help, and they burn all the Faebane. And then that scene where Nesta senses that the cauldron is about to be used, and she screams for Cassian, and he comes barreling over to her, and if she had not screamed for him, he would have died. That scene was when Nesta really started to begin turning around for me. Before that, I wasn't crazy about her, but during the war, she really stepped it up, and I really started liking her. And then something that I just like am still kind of mind-boggled about is that right when they were about to like pretty much all die, Draken shows up with his flying army legion with Miriam. And not only that, but Lucian and the Lost Queen Vasa show up with Feyre's dad leading the ships. I'm sorry, but that is just really, really hard for me to believe. I know that, you know, he might have loved his daughters, but ever since we saw him in the first book when he really just didn't care, I just find it very, very hard to believe that he would go through all of this effort to help them. It also could be that after Tamlin put that glamour on them all and they got back their fortune, that he kind of turned a new leaf. So I'm not going to say that I completely disbelieve it. It's just very hard for me to believe that that actually happens. And then we get that part where Nesta decides to be the distraction to kind of lead Hybern away from the cauldron toward her. Hybern ends up killing their father, ends up shredding Cassian to like pieces, almost kills him. Nesta throws herself in front of Cassian, and right at the last second, Elaine kills Hybern. Elaine stabs him in the neck, and it is honestly one of the best scenes of the book because little Elaine, little soft, kind-hearted Elaine kills the big bad guy, and I absolutely loved it. And then Amren ends up breaking the cauldron, and Feyre and Rhys end up having to put the cauldron back together, and so Rhys lends her some of his power, and he ends up dying. Okay, I knew that people were going to die, so I wasn't really surprised, and I also didn't cry, to be completely honest. I just kind of expected it. Feyre is going absolutely batshit crazy over this, and she's like yelling at all the High Lords. She's like, you brought me back, why can't you bring him back? And so they end up all giving Rhys a piece of their power, and he comes back, and I'm like sitting here like, really? Really? I can see how the High Lords might give a human their power to bring her back as a High Fae, but just the fact that they can bring a High Lord back, like, wouldn't this mean that they would just be bringing people back left and right? Like, I know you have to have all the High Lords, you know, consent giving them some of their power, but still, I feel like people would just be resurrected left and right because this is able to happen now. Not that I wanted Rhys to die and stay dead. I'm very, very, very happy that he's back, but still, I'm just not, like, feeling it. And speaking of that whole part, when Tamlin tells Feyre, you know, you deserve to be happy, that is the Tamlin that I was looking for during the meeting. And then of course they have their meeting at the very end, and they're going to talk about how they're going to, you know, create these new rules, whether they're going to put the wall back up or not, you know, what they're going to do. And then you get that really, really pointless Rhys point of view chapter. Like, I don't know about you guys, but I just found that like 2-page chapter very, very pointless. It honestly like could not have existed and I wouldn't have cared. But the ending of this book I really, really liked because everybody was just happy, and everybody after all this time deserves to be happy. But then at the same time, the ending was way too quick for me, and I would have liked a little bit more of a conclusion to kind of see how everything resolved itself, but you know, we'll see in future books how that's gonna happen. So now, like I said in the beginning, I'm going to talk about some of the things that weren't completely wrapped up in my opinion, and things that I really hope are going to be wrapped up or even mentioned in the next couple of books. So the first thing, like I mentioned, was the Bryaxis disappearance kind of thing. After the war, he just kind of disappears, even though he claimed that the library was his home and that was what he loved. So does this mean that like the bargain that Feyre made with him is kind of null and void? Like, does she even have to give him a window? Does she even have to give him a companion? Because he kind of just ditched everybody. Helion doesn't know about Lucian, and Lucian doesn't know about Helion. I'm hoping in the future that at least one or a few or a whole series of these books are going to be about Lucian and Elaine, or just Lucian himself, because I really think that that was too big of a bombshell to kind of leave hanging like that. Also, they made that deal with Keir that, you know, he was going to have access to Valaris, but like, when is that gonna happen? Like, I get that the war just ended and that's why we didn't see it, but still, like, is it gonna happen? When's it gonna happen? How's it gonna happen? I don't know. The fourth thing is Tamlin. Okay, he fights in this war, and what's he gonna do? Just go back to his devastated court? You know, is anybody ever gonna wanna live there? Next, what about all these human queens? I can't see them being much of a bigger threat than Hybern was. So I don't see how these humans are going to be able to top Hybern, but maybe we'll see, you know, if they end up being the villains in the next couple of books. You know, I'm really interested to see how they're going to try to top Hybern. And then the last thing that wasn't really wrapped up completely for me was this whole romance that I hinted at between Azriel and Elaine and Lucian. I'm still not very happy about it, and I don't really want to know how that's gonna play out, because either way, I'm gonna want both of them to be with her, and it's just never gonna make me happy. And so those are all of my thoughts and feelings and questions that I have about A Court of Wings and Ruin and subsequent books after this. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please let me know what you guys thought about A Court of Wings and Ruin and how she ended it. I'm very happy that everybody was happy, but at the same time, you know, all those things that were left unanswered, and also just how quickly the conclusion was. I'm satisfied, but I'm unsatisfied, and it's kind of like I'm flip-flopping between the two. So let me know how you guys feel. So that is going to be the end of this video. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will catch you later. Bye!